Okay, so I'd like you to put yourself in the situation of a small to medium-sized enterprise, um, and you're a supplier business, and you supply, let's say, drinks, foodstuffs to schools, museums, that kind of thing in your local region. And just like any other business, you're competing on all sorts of things, whether it be quality, the relationships, time, price as well, to an extent. And you've got to accept payments, and you want to accept payments digitally. And you'll know just from speaking to local shops how frustrating it can be for smaller businesses who are not quite comfortable, to say the least, with the amount, the percentage that card transaction fees that are levied onto transactions, and it can be quite hard to understand where the benefit is in terms of what work is going in to earn that percentage that you're essentially giving away. I've spoken to some sort of cafe owners who would really prefer not to accept cash, and it's not because they're trying to avoid tax, as some people say, or other things like that. It is a genuine concern over margins, and this came up in a discussion around a supply business, and it was okay, quite small numbers, but they were talking around say £200-300 a month, just going into fees, which £200-300 a month actually could do a little bit of marketing. And when you are a smaller business, that kind of thing can really start to hurt your competitiveness as well, because you've got suppliers that maybe have more competitive rates with their payment processors, because once you get to a certain level, you can negotiate more on that percentage. But there is a way to do it without actually having to pay any transaction fees, and it's completely fine. I actually stumbled upon this through a internet service provider who takes this approach with collecting payments. Specifically, it was Andrews and Arnold, the um, internet service provider. I'm in no way commercially um, related to Andrews and Arnold, nothing endorsed in any way. It's just a process that they use and I spotted. And also my experience in something called open banking, which allows this process to happen. It's not directly connected to it, but because of um, some economic forces from the European Union to increase competition in banking, um, many banks now, in fact, all banks are forced to have some kind of API access to their banks, and that's often through a third party known as a payment information service provider. But some banks go a little bit further and give you access to your own bank account via an API. And we're in interesting times because as more businesses have a technical aspect to them, um, really, if you're not in technology today, like, technology touches everything, even if you're a baker, right? And for those organizations that are lucky enough to have technical talent within them, or that can outsource a little bit of programming, um, you can have this payment flow where you simply say, hey, especially in B2B, this is perhaps a little bit clunky, to be honest, with B2C, but for B2B, you simply have a page, and this is what other providers do, and I've thrown this together today, where you say, hey, this is the payment reference you need to make. So this could be a link, or should be a link on your website, for example, so it's matched, and it would be on a secure link with a certificate and all those good things. And you simply say, hey, here's the payment reference you need to make, a very familiar requirement for making a payment. Here's the amount, the bank name, this is just an example. And they make the payment using their banking app, whether it be Barclays, NatWest, Monzo, Starling, whatever. And in the background, what your system do, because of this API access that we now have, so I used to be involved in open banking about 4 or 5 years ago now, so it's very prevalent. What you do in the background is you simply poll, you keep asking your bank account with that API access, hey, has that transaction come through with that reference? And once it has, because of Faster Payments, which is a payments network that we have in the UK, it says it takes up to 2 hours, but actually it's much less than that. And I found it to be instant. And other businesses have found that too, and they've started building solutions around it. So I'm going to do this payment right now with this code. So I'm going to make a payment through my banking app. So I use a well-known bank in the UK. So I'm pretending to be the customer now, and I'm making this payment. Perhaps I'm a customer of a supplier who supplies drinks to a college or a business or other foodstuffs. And I'm just faffing around off screen. Obviously you can't see this, but I'm tapping to make a payment. And I'm going to tap to pay somebody, and I'm looking at the account. Obviously I'm paying my real account. In the background I've configured it to look at my own company bank account, and I'm looking at the amount. Okay, and I'm putting the amount in, and I'm most importantly, of course, and we've put the note there, I'm putting the reference in. So I'm changing the reference, and just to make it clear, so for other customers, you can say this is your customer reference number and check against the customer reference number and the amount. And you can have different links. So here's a different link. So this customer, and you can imagine how this would integrate into your payment system quite trivial, how to say that word. So I'm going to make a payment. Pay now. This is all happening on my phone. And in the background, what this code is doing is just keeps looking at the bank account, and I can say I've made the payment, and it checks to see if it can find that payment. And I just make sure I've got the reference right, which I did actually type that wrong. It's customer 1 2 3 4 5 6. There we go. And I'll say I've made the payment, and yeah. So as you know, bank transfers are free, especially in the UK. And in your back office, obviously, you'd have the payment come through, and you'd link that to an invoice. And if you're a financial controller making the payments, obviously you check the payment going out, you check the account name, you confirm that the bank account name matches. And another nice thing about this approach, other than the fact there's no fees associated with it, which is obviously the biggest benefit, depending on how you look at it, but you're also not requiring the customer to enter any of their card details. It stays within the safety of their relative safety of their own banking app. They're in control of that. So you're not having, I mean, obviously check yourself, but you're not having any of those payment PCI worries, PCI, payment compliance industry, for processing credit card information, because you're not even processing bank account information. You're simply receiving funds with a customer reference number, and then at your end, you're checking to see whether that payment arrived, and you're providing that confirmation to the user. And just for completeness, I've put it, I need help making a payment, for if the process is too complicated. I don't think it is too complicated. And as I mentioned, I've seen other companies that are using this method to benefit from not having to pay those opaque fees on credit card networks, payment networks, and things like that. So yeah, it's something to consider.